Dr. Malchiodi. Again, good to see all of you. And if you need anything, please let us know at any time. But wonderful to see your faces.
Okay, feel free to talk a little bit here while I get the PowerPoint up. I'm having a hard time optimizing. I don't know why that's not working. All right, we'll just go with what I have. I don't think I have any sound on. Oh yeah, I do have sound on here. Hold on, let me start again. I want to make sure that you all can hear everything. Okay, it's not allowing me to optimize the video clips. Do you know anything about that, Jim? I don't know. I don't.
Not.
That's weird that it's not letting me do that. Because you gave me co-host.
Yep.
This is the way the world is lately. Nothing's easy. Share sound. Maybe it's going to be okay for it. We'll see.
Yep, we'll try it.
We'll do our best, guys. Okay, let me get my screen share up. And some of you are returning. So some of this will be the same and some of you are new, but I want to do something today too, just for some relaxation, because I don't know about you, but I think it's kind of been a rough start to the year. I don't know if it's the weather or all the bugs that are going around or just having to get back into the swing of things. It seems like we've had a lot of bumps in the road. So I'm going to do a little self-regulation today, have a little fun. So I hope Wendy had sent out, I don't know if Jim knows, the handout I prepared. And she probably did. She's a multitasker. Do you know that, Jim? If she sent that
Yes,
out?
the one that says
okay.
the doodling review. We have it.
Christy, thank you. Yeah, I just want to make sure you had that. I've got a lot of films today to kind of show you this technique, but I hope you try it today because, again, I don't know, we're going to be doodling. It's going to be structured, but boy, I've been doing a lot of doodling, and it's been pretty helpful during these weeks getting through the cold weather and just, I don't know, everything, the barrage of work that you get when you come back, you know, and you all have just come back into school and all those challenges. So anyway, what I want to start out with is some review here. And again, it's going to be, some people are going to recognize some of this and others, it's brand new. But, you know, what I work with, a lot of people know me as a psychologist, but as an art therapist. And that's kind of where I started in visual art. But I do what's called expressive arts therapy with all ages. So this isn't just about children and teens, but you know, that's our focus. But I work with the military, so I work with a lot of adults. And I tell you, the military really have embraced this over the last 10 to 15 years of doing all the different kinds of arts, rhythm, movement, sound, singing, enactment, drama, and you know, the kind of more visual things, drawing and different kinds of art forms, and storytelling. They love to storytell, and a lot of times I work with military and their families, and we get into that and we get into play. So all those things are part of what I do. So it's not just focused on visual art. But what I'm going to focus on today when we get to the second half of this is actually some visual art for self-regulation. So Wendy had asked me if I'd start with that, you know, just for this intro. And if you take the 4 sessions, we're going to get into a lot of different topics. But what I'm also open to, I gave her topics, you know, for our sessions. But if you have some special requests, I certainly can work that in because I've got a wealth of material. And I just want to tell you right now, I hope I don't lose my voice today. I just came off a 3-hour class that we're doing every week online on neurodiversity in the arts. And I know a lot of you are focused on that. And that's a big area. It's been a learning curve for me, but to think about how we can use expressive arts in different ways to support our students and individuals, adults even, who have challenges and they identify as neurodiverse in their learning and their way of interacting with the world. So, just want to put that out there because you can talk to Wendy and Jim and send in some suggestions because I can always cover some of that. So when, we're back on, I'm just going to have myself on here for the recording, but I always show this slide just because I hope that most of you can leave your cameras on, because when we have the dark screen with just a name, I like one of these little boxes here that says, who knows? And that's how our brains react to that. So I always say in the online classes, like the one I just came off of, if people can just focus their camera at the wall, you don't have to be on camera, but those dark screens with just names, we learned from the pandemic, how dysregulating that can be. When we're already anxious, our brain kind of thinks like, who's in back of that dark screen and that name? So anytime I look at the screen in a while, when I get to see all of you again, it's really helpful to see faces. And I don't mind noise and things like that. It happens on Zooms. If you should make a noise right now, you'll come on screen and you'll be part of the film. That's up to you. That doesn't bother me. I like the humanity of it, but it's always helpful to be able to see faces for all of us. We've kind of learned that. The research now is showing us how we really perceive this. It's a wonderful platform, but has its challenges, I guess. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about expressive arts therapy, because it's kind of how I identify, as an expressive arts therapist. And beginning of my career, I worked in the classroom. Some of you heard that story already if you've been on here before, but my first years in working in the arts were as an art teacher, as what we called a resource teacher with students who were labeled learning disabled at that time. A lot of different challenges, and also alternative schools where we had all kinds of different, this was in public high school, teenagers who were gifted, but maybe emotionally challenged, had things that were going on at home, these kinds of very complex situations that we encounter with everyone in the classroom. It's not just everyone has the same story, right? And it's a challenging situation to have all these different kinds of backgrounds in a classroom. So a little bit familiar with that. And a lot of times now working with the military, I work a lot with their children. So some of that, comes off of classroom referrals as well. And the other thing, my last name, people like, wow, what the heck is it? It's Northern Italian. I'm actually blonde, but it's Malchiodi. And you'll get that. It's not the most important thing here, but sometimes it's really fun to kind of tell you what the heck that name sounds like. And it's a Northern Italian. My father was an immigrant who came over to the US I think he came over in the 1920s. He came over as a 10-year-old. And so I'm first generation after immigrants coming from Northern Italy. So that's where that name comes from. So just let me get started here with this definition so that we all are on the same line with like, what the heck is expressive arts therapy? So it has to do with art because you see art in the title. Sometimes we just call it expressive arts. Sometimes we call it expressive therapies. There's some names that get tossed around and they all mean about the same thing, but it's using a lot of different art forms together. Today we'll be more focused on just visual art, but because you'll be doing some, I'm just going to call it doodling, you're using movement and rhythm in what you're doing. So when I'm thinking about expressive arts for different people, different age groups, different situations, I'm always thinking about how many different things can I kind of bring into it and what might be helpful, in that situation for that particular group. You're thinking a lot about classrooms or maybe particular students that you work with, but all of these things can come into it. Some of them we're kind of challenged we can talk about it on Zoom, but we can't do them as well. Hopefully at some point I'm going to get to be with some of you in the same room and we can do some of these things that are more interactive with each other. But basically we're thinking here about visual art, music and sound. I work a lot with sound. So I'm working with percussion and drumming and all those kinds of things, making sounds, but also singing, dancing or movement, drama. So that could be improvisational, just some fun, role plays, interacting in that way. I think humor is a big part of it, playfulness, and, creative writing's in there too. So a lot of things we've done in the last 2 years. Sometimes I have people do some writing about it after they do whatever it is we're working in the expressive arts, and maybe visual art or movement or rhythm, and then doing some writing about it. So I work in a, more or less a psychotherapy and counseling kind of practice, but a lot of what I do actually with the military, I wouldn't call it so much psychotherapy or counseling. When I'm working with the families, I'm basically bringing in this expressive arts, to work with them as a family, or sometimes a larger community, because we work maybe with large groups and doing things together that are helpful to our goal. Actually, with that work is to boost resilience and strengthen the family, and have them communicate to each other in different ways. So I don't really think that's psychotherapy. I might base it on counseling or psychotherapy, but we're doing something really helpful, I think, to give them resilience and joy, curiosity, playfulness, confidence, mastery through expressive work. So I just wanted to share that. I'll probably come back to that in the other sessions, just to give you an idea, like, okay, what do I do on an average day, or how do I think about this thing called expressive arts therapy? So I have one more thing here, and this is a film that'll kind of run here while I'm talking, but no sound, so don't worry that you can't hear any sound. But I just wanted to tell you, expressive arts is not something new. Expressive arts therapy, I don't think, is anything really new. It's been around with humans for thousands of years. When we go to church and we sing together, or we go, to do something. Well, here's a good one right here. In China, people do Tai Chi together. They've done this for thousands of years. They do it still today. If you ever have visited China, you look out the window and see all these people getting together. There are a lot of rituals and procedures and ceremonies that we're all familiar with, and they're kind of arts-based. We express ourselves in different ways. This is something in New Zealand called the haka, where people get out and they do this procedure, this dance, this movement, they're also sound making that we can't hear on this film. But, before words, this is all how we express ourselves. So I think about this a lot as kind of the real basis of why do we do this? Well, we've been doing it as humans for a long time. So we've always expressed our thoughts and feelings in this way. So this is another thing I often share, not just with you all as educators, but also counselors and play therapists and psychotherapists, that we really can think about the expressive arts in 4 areas. And, this is pretty simple, and there's a lot of more detail to it, but I wanted to make it simple for today. You can look at it as moving, moving the body, and moving together. So maybe, doing things together where we're mirroring each other. It's almost, like a lot of the things you probably already do in the classroom when you have people move together. Even in an exercise class, we all get into this attunement with each other in the same rhythm, which we call synchrony. Then, making sounds, making music together, making rhythm together, getting, in the same rhythm together, which is often called entrainment. So that's a big area of expressive arts. Then we have storytelling, which we can do through making pictures that tell a story, or enacting, or playing out something. So storytelling can be writing as well. So narrative and sharing a story out loud. And then I always say there's a 4th category, which we're going to experience a little bit today, hopefully, if you try the little art experience we have. Kind of silencing the body and regulating us. So calming us down and doing something that's soothing. And a lot of you may already have something you do like that. And, you know, it may be, well, I know in this household, I call this an art form, gardening, you know, working. Now we can't do this right now in the middle of the winter, but these repetitive kinds of things that we really enjoy, you know, doing, and they self-soothe us in some way and regulate us in some way. So a lot of different expressive arts we can think about that way. You know, there's some movement that helps us, like that picture of the Tai Chi in China. People are experiencing balance, they're moving together, but they're also kind of quieting their mind and body. They have to focus on doing that movement together. So that's a form of silencing the body, or, you know, making you feel better, you know, just doing some sensory based things that are like, wow, I feel better right now. I feel more joyful. I feel like I had a pleasant experience, and those kinds of things. So that's just another way to think about it. There are different characteristics to this. And I'll probably come back to this, you know, again in the 4 sessions. So just, you know, kind of take this in and let it sit. These are some of the things, and I think there are many things why we want to have the arts in the classrooms. And I have to say, you know, I'm old enough to know when there were a lot more arts in the classroom than we have now. You know, we're kind of challenged in that area, but it's possible to bring the arts in, you know, in other ways. I mean, I'm of the generation where I actually was an art teacher, right, in the public school. And there were 3 other art teachers in a high school with me. I think those kinds of things are now unheard of. But, you know, that was the way arts were presented, you know, and there was a theater teacher as well. And that kind of thing went on in schools. Now it's a different thing. How do we get the arts in there? Because we really know that through the arts, many students, and again, I think sometimes neurodiversity is part of this, they get the socio-emotional experiences only through the arts, through doing something sensory, through doing something that has all the qualities that the arts bring in that words alone do not. And that part of that is why all these years of working with the military and their families, the Army in particular really likes this idea, because they believe that all the families should get these socio-emotional experiences through doing the arts together in some way. So, you know, basically, hopefully building knowledge through the arts when we're thinking about the classroom, improving skills, but also supporting resilience and kind of emotional health in a way that's not necessarily psychotherapy or counseling, but it helps students, of course, and adults too, express themselves in ways that they can't through words. The second thing I just want to say here, I'll be saying this concept over and over again, probably, embodied cognition. Some of you might be familiar with it. It comes out of education, but it means that when we're learning, if we're doing something while we're learning, and the arts can be one way to do that, that we get this experience that strengthens the learning. And it's, you know, referred to often as embodied cognition, because we're putting the body into it somehow by drawing or moving or making sounds or enacting or role playing or whatever it is. We're getting that embodied cognition. Now they're starting to think, in my field, I work a lot with traumatized people, that that's a really important thing for them too, to not just sit and talk with a therapist, but do something like the expressive work in order to get that experience. And then the third thing, and you know, this one's hard to convey on Zoom because we're not all in the same room technically, that we need this idea of synchrony between us. And that's important in the classroom too, between teachers and students. Mirroring, doing things together in some way is very helpful for many. And I have something coming up on my screen here. I'm going to make sure that goes away. So applying that principle of moving together, doing together, something that, you know, we have the same experience together on a sensory level is a really important thing. So here's that. I just wanted to show you this. It's got a little film here. It's not moving. Here we go. Embodied cognition, just to give you a visual here. This is just a young person drawing on a big piece of paper with both hands. not even making anything in particular. But, you know, again, when we get engaged in something like this, and this one person's using both sides of their body. So that's a really interesting experience, that the body in motion, using the senses, learns more. Just want to give you that visual. So that's just one of, you know, hundreds of things you can do, but give you that impression of what this is to really get moving through the arts. Okay, and then just a couple pictures here, and I'll go back to this with a little film towards the end. But doing the arts together, we're finding out more and more that that's pretty important. You know, again, I'm going to go back to just the military setting, where we have oftentimes 50 or 100 people in the room, families, doing something. They're all doing the same thing together. Well, they may be working in family units, creating something together, but this together doing is a really important thing for us. And I think now that we've been through that, you know, we're still kind of in it, but the pandemic, the worst part of it was being isolated. We really learned a lot about why we need to be together, why we as humans need to be connected. And doing a lot of these things as I had to do during the isolation time when we were locked down, and do them like you had to teach online. I had to do therapy online and try to do expressive work with people through the Zoom. It was helpful, but it's not the best. People need to be together to do things together at the same time and sense each other in that moment. So, you know, the arts, I think, we can have conversations together, but the arts strengthen it even more, because we can experience each other's senses through movement, through rhythm, through sound, through whatever image is we're making, through playfulness, all these different things. So I hope that makes sense, because it's another important piece, I think, of what you can bring into, you know, the classroom with expressive work. And this one I'm not going to go over so much, because I think in the first session I'm going to talk more about this and give you more of an experience around it. But what's interesting now that we know about the expressive work, we can either focus more on some of the higher thinking in the brain, or just kind of the body stuff, the body in motion, the body engaging in certain rhythms, the voice engaging in certain sounds. We can focus more on lower areas of the brain or higher areas of the brain, or we can take people or our students through all those different areas. So, you know, this is a little picture here that I adopted from very famous child psychiatrist Bruce Perry, who's done a lot of really interesting work in trauma and worked a lot with young children and their families. And he really has some good ideas about how we can think about activity-based things that we do in sessions. Say we're working with a parent and a child. So you, as working as a teacher with a child, can focus on certain areas more, areas that maybe are self-regulatory, that are lower brain areas. So we'll be doing something today that's rhythmic and not really making any images. When we get into making images, we're more in the higher brain. We're starting to create things that we can tell stories about, you know, and have more symbolism to them. So that's just keep this in mind. This is, again, the arts are not just one part of the brain, they're all parts of the brain. We use all parts of the brain when we do anything in the arts, but we can focus more in one area than another when we think about the different kinds of activities that we can put out there. So Jim, is this all recording nicely? You can hear everything?
Yes.
Okay, good. Here I am talking away, and I just thought, like, wow, I wonder if they can hear me. I knew you would have said something to me if not. So I'm going to put a few of your faces here now on the screen so I can see you. So what we're going to do here first, hopefully, well, this is what we're going to focus on. We're going to look a little bit about why doodle, you know, because every time, you know, people think about, wow, expressive arts, I'm going to have to draw or do these things. No, most of them are pretty uncomplicated and pretty simple. And I just wanted to start with this one. We've done some of this in the past, but I don't think I did this particular one. So I wanted to bring this today so that you all could take away kind of a little technique here that I hope you do, because I hope, you know, as I've been thinking about, this is our 3rd year doing this. I've been also very focused on what you all get from it personally. You know, I know that you're thinking about, okay, let me take this and adapt these things and bring them to the classroom, you know, with my students. But also, we're all under a lot of stress. And certainly, let's admit that, you know, working in education is not always unstressful. You know, and we can have different levels of that. I mean, we can be stressed, we can be distressed, and there can be situations that feel traumatizing for us too. And what do we have for tools for self-care? Think about this as we go through it. If it's something that resonates with you, it's, you know, maybe something to continue doing, you know, yourself, and just have some fun with it for your own self-care. So the first thing I just want to show you here is some of the reasons why, you know, we should do this, because a lot of times I think, again, the arts and expressive arts get portrayed as, well, it's a nice activity, but, you know, what is really happening here? And doodling's pretty interesting, because actually there have been a lot of people who've done a lot of research on it. You know, it's kind of surprising what people can get grants for. And somebody's gotten grants for looking at what doodling does. And what's really interesting to me, and they actually did this with another very often stressed population, which are nurses. You know, nurses go through a lot during a given day. And when they presented, just sit down during your lunch hour after you have your lunch and just doodle for 15 minutes, just 15 minutes, they could see an incredible, measurable amount of stress reduction. Heart rates going down, blood pressure going down. In some studies, they were able to measure, I don't want to get too technical, but cortisol, which is a stress hormone in our body. And, you know, it's kind of a hormone that slows down our metabolism. It can be part of, you know, why people get type 2 diabetes. So this was really important, that they found out that cortisol actually got lowered after 15 minutes of just sitting around, not drawing anything in particular, pen and paper, and just doodling for 15 minutes. And some of the other things are pretty easy to recognize here. We doodle all the time while we're on the, maybe we're on a Zoom meeting right now, maybe we're doodling already, or we're on the phone doodling. It's familiar stuff, and the materials are simple. You know, it's whatever we got in hand, some kind of a pen. And one of the things they found out, it really helps people stay in the present with, you know, some kind of thing that's tangible. So, you know, in the therapy world, we talk a lot about being mindful, having mindfulness and meditation practices. This is actually a much better way to be present, because we just have our pen and paper and we just get into it and, you know, just get away from the world for a while. So all that's part of the research. And then the other pieces were pretty interesting. People versus in a coloring book. And I'm not saying coloring books are anywhere near wrong. A lot of times people find a lot of calm in just sitting and coloring. A lot of students find, I like to color, you know, in a coloring sheet. But if they do something like just doodling, they tend to have more confidence and a sense of mastery after a while, as compared to just the coloring book. So, and then the really important thing for those of us that are getting older, brain power. We get more memory and brain power if you're a regular doodler, better recall of information. And sometimes, and I know this from my own learning, I was a challenged learner in grade school. If I got to do artwork while, and a lot of my teachers realized this and let me do drawing while I was listening, I picked up a lot more information. So somebody actually studied this and found out that it's pretty true that if people are doodling, they pick up a lot more information, they get a better recall. So, you know, there's just a lot of other things, you know, sense of accomplishment and the fine motor skills. So all that comes into doodling. I think that's a really interesting thing. So what we're going to try, and I hope you brought some, I just had some index cards. You could have a piece of white paper. Hopefully you have a heavier piece of white paper. And we're going to try something called NeuroArt. It's also got a fancy name, Neurographica. But a lot of the people that I work with, all ages, children, adolescents, adults. I have a lot of adults that are, doing this regularly. They like this form of doodling. So it's not like a free form doodle. It's a little bit structured, but they really enjoy doing it. And I think that that's something, hopefully somebody does some research on here. It hasn't really been researched, but a lot of the anecdotal evidence people report, they say, wow, I really enjoy doing this. I really like doing this over and over again. So if you have some white paper of some kind, I like the thicker one, photocopy paper is fine. But if you have I think I have some cardstock here, some heavier paper, any size, it's okay. I just thought this would be a good size because it's nice and small. The 5x7 index card is fine. And thick, thin, and chisel point Sharpie pens, I put on the thing that you just need, a black Sharpie pen is good to start with for a lot of reasons you'll see here in a little while. And then some color felt markers if you want to go on to some of the other steps here. So I think my next one here, yeah, this is a YouTube woman. I think she's working in a hospital setting, and she made a really nice YouTube that I broke into 2 parts here that shows you how to get started. So if you have your materials, you might want to get started and follow what she's saying. So basically you can watch this and then we can move on and you can get started during this or after this. But she takes you through some of the steps here. Using a Sharpie pen, she'll tell you a little bit more about that. So let's see if our film works with the sound today. Hopefully we're going to be able to.
So what you're going to need for this project is a paper of any kind. I'm going to today use a big piece just so you can see it, but it can be photo paper, it could be an index card, it could be anything that you have at home, for even a post-it for something that you have in your purse, right? It's all about de-stressing and just kind of reducing our anxiety that we have. The first thing that I want you to do is really kind of think of one thought. Is it a fear? Is it a challenge? Is it just the word peace? Is it uncertainty of something or discomfort that you're finding something in right now? Is it setting a boundary? What does that boundary look like? And I want you to write it down on the back of your paper.
This is optional. If you have like a thought or a word all of a sudden that came to mind, you can write that down on the back of the paper. I don't often ask
You're
people
just going to
that.
go ahead and flip it. You're going to just take a Sharpie marker. I usually use a chisel, but there's all sorts of kinds. There's just the fine point and then the ultra fine point. So these are 3 really great pen sizes to use. I like the idea of using a permanent marker first because if I add any other mixed media to it, it is permanent and will not bleed. So what we're going to do is we are just going to make it kind of a tangle. We're going to take our line for a little walk. So you're just really going to use up your whole piece of paper. You're just going to fill up our page.
So I'm just going to stop there. So if you have a piece of, like this was my little index card, just make a whatever kind of line on there you'd like to, just a big old squiggle on there.
And I'm going to have any loose end just go right off the page. Okay, anywhere where we have an intersection of lines, we are going to round that out with our pen. So I'm going to just do that. And this is the part that really gets to be nice. If I go nice and slow, I'm not going to have any bumps in my pens. I'm just going to round out those edges. And this is the part that really gets meditative. I can get a cup of tea, light a candle, and really just fall into this. Sometimes if we have neuropathy or arthritis, our hands might be a little shaky, that we might have a little lines that bump out. Don't be too hard on yourself and don't worry about that. You can always go back with a bigger marker and just slowly kind of clean up your line. The idea is to not go fast. just go slow. The wind down of your mind. I tend to use a little bit bigger marker for all of this, just for you, but you can use a regular Sharpie too. Does not matter. Depending on your piece of paper, you can use a little bit bigger one. And with this marker too, I've got a great point that I could create a thin line, but then also with the chisel, I can fill in any bumps in the road that I have. So I'm going to just do that. I'm going to continue on. It's kind of a nice thing too. If I do have some white spaces, I can take a cup. If I'm drinking a hot cup of tea, I can take my cup and go ahead and create circles right on top of it. So if I want to add just a little bit of dimension, it's really awesome what it looks like. When you have circles on there, it tends to look a little botanical, and I love lotus pods. They're my favorite. You can use any size if you want. If you're not very fond of circles, you can use triangles or squares, any shape that you can trace, whether it's with a stencil or something like that. This one's just a little free flow, and that's awesome. It can just be out on its own, or you can connect it by just that with a line. So all of these are going to be rounded out. Your edge too, you're going to want to take your edge afterwards and do a nice black line to give it a little frame around. Okay, so it's going to kind of have that, and then your lines will go right into that. If they go,
I'm going to stop that for a second. So I started out with this on my index card. I just got this broken up into stages, and then I did another one, and she's kind of making these little connections between your squiggles, you know, where there's little junctures. So that's one thing you can do, is make those little connections. So, you know, here's one up here, all these connections in there. So that's another step here. So this is like step one. This is step two. And you notice she just took like cups and things and put like circles. So, you know, tracing's okay, you know, it's, so she wanted to add those little pieces in there. And that's something that I often do myself, is go in there and put some other
the page, you can kind of have that be a little bit thicker. So it's just a nice little transition off the page. Variety in line, I think, is really nice, thin to thick. And I have had some people just, you know, whether it's quick, they want to get it done, and they'll just do this and they're done and I'm finished, but that's not really rounding out. That's almost like bloating, right? So we want to kind of curve in like that, creating a little corner than our edges, okay? And if we do a line, say if we have someone that just did, let's say I'll get a line like that and did it, you really need this and this to really kind of go into the shape, and that's the part where it's meditative and relaxing, and just with some soft music, it's amazing how it just brings down your stress and lowers that anxiety. I'm going to show you some pages that I have finished, this being the beginning. And
okay, so that's the first part here. I'm going to go on to the
so what you're going to need for
next slide here. So let's just spend a couple more minutes, you know, working on this part with your, just your basic, she calls them tangles. I call it a tangle line. You could call it a scribble line. And then that whole thing of rounding the corners. So those little connectors, which I have to say, now I've done this quite a bit myself. I really like those rounding the corners. For some reason, I feel really satisfied when I go through and I round all those junctures out. And like she said, not just to make a dot, but to go in there and actually round out those pieces. She goes and makes lines thicker with her chisel point. That's another thing you can do. So you can see here, you know, I just said to have that at least one black Sharpie, but if you had those 3 different sizes, there's different kinds of things you can do with that. Just depends on how much you've got on hand. And of course you can do bigger ones. This one's one I've started and haven't really gotten into the next step, which I'll show you here in a second. Dr. Jim, are you working on one?
Yes, but I'm working on an iPad, so with an Apple Pencil. So
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
I'm kind of doing like designs on
Uh-huh.
your graphic via the, so, yep. But I'm
So-
doing more tracing than I am anything else, just mixing a lot of colors.
That's okay, whatever floats your boat. It's like you do you. But that's why, you know, although you work here for just a little bit longer, and then I'm going to show you one more step here that you can continue, and then a couple of films, you know, just I'm trying to look at our time here. That's why I also attached on the handout. And you can find these on Google. Those are two that I use a lot. They're just like little sheets that have all different kinds of doodles on them. Because again, either when I'm working with children or teens or the military, and I'll go back to the military again because I have a lot of combat military. Some of them are now veterans. They might have traumatic brain injury as well, and they really need the prompts. And the prompts are okay because they look and they see like, oh, okay, that design, I think I'll include that design, you know, and they need that visual kind of inspiration. So there's so many you can download, and there are websites. When you go to put images in and look for, I call them doodle cheat sheets, and you get like tons of them. And you'll also get websites that you can visit. And a lot of people have free downloads of a lot of these different designs. So I just gave you two of them. I mean, you on Google, you're going to find hundreds, all different kinds. And I like those too. I take those with me if I'm traveling somewhere and I just want to do these little doodles on these square sheets of paper or rectangle. I have those with me because I'll look and see, oh, okay, I want to try that one. Pretty soon you find out you really haven't copied it exactly. You're kind of learning a new thing. It's like learning a language, you know, your own doodle language. And you find ones that you like better than others. And, you know, you just repeat them because it feels good. So let me move on here. Let's see. I'll look at my slide here. Okay, here we go. Okay, so this is the next half of how she's explaining her process with this and adding color and adding other kinds of images to it.
And just make
These are
some
just
lines.
options.
They tend to look like brain cells and neurons too when you do that. And like I said, the lotus pod, adding circles within. So if I just have a circle like this, I can go ahead and you know, add some little circles like that. I can make big ones, whatever I want. And then the space behind it, the negative space, I'm going to go ahead and fill that in. So it just looks like a piece of like a lotus pod, which is great. Okay, so you would fill in that whole space. If you did want to make lines, I would probably take a thinner marker. And to do that, you want to just start at that one line and finish at the one line. So you'll have that really thick kind of shaded area always, because you're always starting at the same place each time and ending at the same time. So it really almost looks like an onion skin, right? The layers of it, it's awesome. So I'm going to show you some different things that this is done just with a different color. So it doesn't always have to be in black. You can use it just a starting color, can be a different one. You can also add watercolor to it afterwards. That's why it's so important to use the permanent marker. And then this actually it had a lot of green on it. So I just took a little paper towel and blotted it, and then it actually gave a really great texture. I can always add a little bit of line with a little bit more doodle if I want, and push it a little bit farther. Here's one that is, I thought of a tree, kind of where my roots are, and then blossoming, and then just adding marker inside of it, and then adding some more doodles in the negative space. It's a nice way of just kind of thinking how we were talking about letting go of something or growing, thinking of a shape that might help you do that.
So those are some good ideas. I haven't gotten to that tree yet, but it's really intriguing to me that that's one way to build that. What I keep thinking about when I've watched her tape, like I don't know how many times, and thinking about watching people do this now that I've introduced them to it, the confidence that they get from it, but they also find it almost addictive. You know, there are people, and if you go, if you're somebody that has a Facebook account and you look up neuro art or neurographica art, there are so many groups that are on there, people doing this. And what I found was really interesting, reading what people say, their lived experience of doing this form of doodling. There were a lot of people that they survived some pretty you know, challenging events, a lot of them cancer patients, and saying how much this was relaxing for them as they had to go through their illness. And then the number of people that's saying, I do this every night before I go to sleep because it relaxes me. And I sleep so much better if I do this for 15, 20 minutes, a half hour before I go to sleep. And I thought, wow, somebody ought to be measuring this, because I thought the things that they were reporting were really interesting. But then the sharing, of course, on the groups where people could see all these different things that people were coming up with in their images, just were really lovely. So, you know, this would be your next steps here if you wanted to go on with this. And I think I have mine here. Yeah, this one, I really enjoy what she called, I don't know why she calls it a lotus pod, but it's like a seed pod to me. And making those little circles in certain parts of my doodle and then filling it in with all those circles and just going around whatever, you know, whatever one kind of speaks to me to put the little circles in. And then my last one, I just use, that's why I said, if you have color felt markers, to go in then, and you know, if you want to color it in and give it some color, or you can just leave it black and white. But those are the really simple steps, but you can see a lot from what she said. She was going in a lot of different directions and using a lot larger paper. So, but I like these little index cards because you can do this in a pretty short amount of time. So those are kind of all the steps there. So while you're kind of working on that, we have a couple other films here I just want to share with you to give you some different ideas. I've got two of them here. I said before, you know, all this thing about working together is really important. So this is something we can't do on Zoom, but if we're in the same room, we could do it together. And usually what I do is you'll see on here mostly groups of 3 people drawing together. One is leading the others, the other 2, to music. So I'm trying to bring in here, this would be a real expressive arts-based kind of process, because I'm asking people to follow each other's movement, go with the music as the rhythm, and they're creating an image together, just using felt markers, and the paper is about 18 by 24 inches, so it gives a lot of room for people to move around. So I have 2 different films here I'm just going to show you. You'll hear some of the music, but you'll certainly see people working together in that way. The music's probably pretty quiet on your end, but it's pretty slow, kind of quiet instrumental music. You can use any rhythm you want to. And when you're looking at this one, I'm using the Crayola markers that are thinner. I like those for this, but you could use any kind of Sharpie, Crayola, the regular. I just want to stop here. I'm going to show you one more little film. It's a little bit different, but same procedure. But so if you have 3 people here, let me just explain this. Each person gets a chance to be the leader. So we switch papers, then another person leads to the music and the other 2 follow. So they did 3 different ones if they were in groups of 3s. Each person gets that chance to be the leader, listen to the music, start to make the motion, and the other 2 follow. So you can see here, you know, different for different groups, how they're following each other. But let me show you this next one. This one's kind of fun. This is, I just was working in Spain in December with a group of therapists, teachers, people who all worked, you know, either with children, adolescents, or adults in some way, you know, to be helpful to them. And this was their most favorite activity. And I think people in Spain really love music. And they love together on the paper. Okay, I think I'm at the end here. I'm going to jump out of the slide share and see everyone again. Oh, we have a lot of dark screens. Hey, show up. Let me see your faces. It's very anxiety producing for me not to see you, or at least your wall or some kind of a picture.
We would love to see some examples of the work you've done.
Yeah.
You all are awesome. So
yeah, hold up. Can anybody have any comment? What did you find out? You're arts-based researchers in this moment, so I'm trying to see if there's anybody. Dr. Jim can call on somebody. Who spoke?
The longer,
Christy, go ahead.
Christy, the longer I do it, the more therapeutic it is. In the beginning, as a somewhat perfectionist, it's not as therapeutic, but the longer I sit and doodle, it becomes more therapeutic. But mine kind of turned itself into a hummingbird. I don't know if anybody can see it.
Wow. Oh, move it over.
So then I added. So there's the hummingbird. Like there's its mouth right there.
Add my spotlight here with you.
Mouth
Oh.
and wing is up there. So there's its head. And so I added another side
You're
which is
probably
not
like
so.
me. The first time I did it, I got, when she said about that thing with the wiggly line and how you could correct it, I was so glad to hear that, because when I first started to make the tangle, I had these tangles I didn't like, you know, and then I thought, oh, that's how you
Right.
fix it. You know?
Yes.
Yeah.
It used to drive me nuts in college when you had to create portraits without picking up
Oh, yeah.
your
Contour.
pen.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know that one. Yeah. Thank you. Let me see. Do we have anyone else? Andre, I'm going to put you on spotlight just because you're holding yours up. Ooh, hold it up again. Wow. So you got started with the color. Unmute yourself.
Yes, ma'am. I sure did. I moved on.
Oh, I like the way you did all those different, see, that's where your cheat sheet comes in handy.
Yes.
Think up different doodles to put in there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So I was going to start going with a warm color scheme, maybe with the insides, and then the background would be a dark, cool color scheme.
Yeah. What size paper is that? It's like a
It's the index card.
side. Yeah.
A little bit bigger than the small ones.
Yeah. Yeah. It says a 6x8. That's the next size. All the sizes.
But not too big.
Yeah. No, that's the thing. I think that's a thing, and that's a good point. Like, okay, you got just so much time to introduce this or do it yourself. Like, what is the size you should work at, you know, and smaller is going to take less time, and bigger, more fun, but, you know, will, you know, exceed the time you've got to let people do it, to let students, you know, engage in it, or yourself, right? Because when I got in these bigger ones here, yeah, you know, I forgot, like, I needed to start the crock pot, you know, stuff like that.
And also for us, the Post-its would be perfect just for the, or if you need a cool down, just have a
Yeah.
Post-it, you know.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Yeah, and another one, when you said the Post-its, I don't know, they're harder to get, but they're, and I always think about this because some children and adolescents you're dealing with work better on a darker background with a white gel pen. They do a different kind of drawing, and sometimes they'll say, this was easier for me, I like this more to draw with a gel pen on the black background. They used to have black Post-it note size, and that was really fun to work on too. So you could do the same thing. Yeah. Who else do we see, Dr. Jim?
Anybody else want to share out?
You could call on them.
You have some comments in the chat. Susan Tipton, I do feel really chill when I do those and can focus. And then Sarah Thorpe, I was able to relax my mind and not worry. Uh-oh, Susan, she's called you back because she
I'm
messed
good
up.
at Zoom at going to the gallery and just picking you out. You know? Hi, Susan. I sent you an email. I guess you got it. Did you do one? You got to unmute. Oh, yeah. You really got focused on the
It's
connectors.
just the beginning of it. I didn't have any thick markers, so I was using my little tiny pen. So
Oh, okay. Yeah.
anyway, I got my little corners taken care of. But I love seeing everybody else's for sure.
Yeah. Should we do like a, a gallery view and everybody hold theirs up? Let's see if I can do that.
Yep, you
I
should be
know
able to do that.
Wendy's going to look at the film. She's going to want to see what everybody did.
Yeah, and as you all know, everybody, you need to share out on social media as you do always. But absolutely, we want to showcase you all.
Yeah. The last time, yeah, when everybody posts to social media, let me know where it is so I can check it out. I'm not on Twitter. I refuse to tweet anymore. So if it's on Twitter, I'll miss you. But other like Instagram, I'll catch you if you're on Instagram.
If you all want to hold up, I'll try to get a picture of those that want to share out.
You can do everybody hold it up and I can do a screenshot. There we go. Good one. Wendy's going to want to, she'll look at this, you know, and see what you've been doing. She'll check this out.
Anybody have any questions? I know we're at 5 o'clock, and any comments? I know this has been very relaxing, very as always, very therapeutic. Dr. Malchiodi, you're a part of our Renaissance family, and it's so good to have you back with us. So lots of positive comments in the chat, and I know you're going to see that in the evaluations. I'll go ahead and post that, and then make sure you let me know if that works okay. But anybody have any questions, any comments, or
anybody think about the drawing together? What was your reaction to that? It has to be structured because you have to think about your music and you have to have a nice big piece of paper.
I think maybe letting kids lay on the floor and do something like that might be a good way to handle that. The bigger the paper, they can kind of just, that was what was coming in my mind anyway, as I was watching what you were doing, with your participants.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Sarah Thorpe has a question in the chat. I asked, it's called neurographic art.
Yep, neurographic. Sometimes it's called neuro art. I can't think if there's another name for it. Supposedly, I can just tell you before we let you go, supposedly somebody in Europe invented this. Just came upon it with kind of those rules, with making the squiggle, putting the connectors, then going in and filling in some of the spaces and adding color, and started to do research on that. But it's become a phenomenon. If you go on Facebook, there are a lot of groups that are people doing it. And I don't know, it's interesting.
And Robin had a comment. I've done group drawings with first grade. Space limitations are one obstacle for me. And then Tanya's not on mute, so she can speak up. It looked like those participating were really enjoying it. Tanya, you have a comment you want to add, or? Where
are you, Tanya?
I wasn't on mute.
No, you were unmuted, so I don't know how that happened, but there you go. You're on.
I had two computers going because for some reason my school computer, I can't get the sound to stay on. So I had my phone on too.
Oh, it's all good. We love hearing from you.
No, I just really enjoy it myself. And then, you can tell from the videos that the people that are participating in the group sessions are enjoying it, that they are synchronized and just really, finding pleasure in doing that to the music, but as well as with one another. So it's very interesting to see how well they collaborate.
Well, what's interesting too is I would say before the pandemic and after, even though we're not out of the pandemic, so to speak, but we kind of are because we're back together. Before, people were really close. Then the first time I went to, I think it was Texas, and it was still, people were masking a little bit, but they had just said you didn't have to mask. It was a choice on this in a university. And people were like not so close. They were mirroring each other, but they were farther apart. It was like we learned that because we got this thing about like, oh boy, somebody coughs or anything, poof, and now people are getting closer again. It's kind of interesting. We've had to go through that because we were told isolate, stay away, don't get near anybody. And it kind of affected the group things that we would do in expressive work. And, some people wore masks, some people didn't in the transition. And now, we're more comfortable with each other again because we were ordered, isolate, stay away, distance. And now people are closer with that. So, that's another thing to look for because we still all retain some of those memories and, how we respond to being close to each other. I think a lot about that with expressive work, because we've been through a lot recently with that and how, give people choices about how close to be to each other.
Do you think it would be just as therapeutic? So I teach English. I used to teach art, and I would do like 15 minutes of art therapy at the beginning of the class and then an art history lesson. And then they would create based on the art history lesson. But now in English, I was thinking of for something a little different to do like their vocabulary words, like choose a word and then do doodles with that word.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good idea. So Jim,
Any other,
yeah, we've
any other
kept it
questions?
past the 5 o'clock mark, which is good, right?
Absolutely.